So this video covers bar charts. Bar charts are just graphs of rectangular bars with the length of the bars being proportional to the value being represented. They're great for representing discrete data and particularly nice for showing trends over time. I have a simple example here. I've pulled some data from a website called W3 Schools. They actually track which browser visitors to their website are using. They do a month-by-month tracking, but I've chosen just to pull out the January data from 2008 when they first started through 2013. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind when you're doing a bar chart is that your data for each category needs to be entered in as a column. So when I go to enter in the numbers corresponding to Internet Explorer, I'm going to enter those 6 numbers into Matlab as a column vector, not a row vector, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the other 3 browsers listed here. So let's go to Matlab. So you can see I've entered in the data for the 4 browsers listed in the table, and I have indeed entered those in as column vectors. Now I'm going to go ahead and concatenate those 4 columns together into a single matrix. So I'm creating a matrix that I'm going to call browser, and I take each of those 4 columns and enter them in, and I get a list of values that correspond exactly to the values in the table, with each column in that matrix corresponding to one of the various browsers in the table. The command to create a bar chart in Matlab is the bar function, and it works exactly the same as plot. You've got 2 entries. The first entry is going to correspond to what you want on the x-axis. The second entry is going to correspond to the data that belongs on the y-axis. So I've created a vector called year that runs from 2008 to 2013. That's what's going on my x-axis. My browser data is going on my y-axis, and if I run that command, I get a bar chart. Now, of course, I need to add a couple extra things to this in terms of labeling and legend. So I add a couple of commands to create a legend for the 4 browsers, and to put a label on the x-axis and a label on the y-axis using x label and y label. I get a nice bar chart that shows what browsers the visitors to this website have been using, and you can look at this and see very easily that the percentage of the people that are using Internet Explorer has dropped significantly from 2008 to 2013. Chrome has become very popular, and Firefox went up for a while, but it looks like Chrome is sort of taking over as the browser of choice, at least for people that are visiting that W3 Schools website. In some cases, you may not want numeric data on the x-axis. You may actually want to put some labels on the x-axis for your bar graphs. So let's take a look at that. If I want to put labels on the x-axis, I don't really need to put a first argument in the command bar. If I don't have a first argument, let's see what happens. It just creates all the data and plots all the data, and then you can see it just labels the x-axis with numbers starting at a number 1. So now we want to replace those with some sort of string type of labels, which is very easy to do. I need to create a cell array with all of the strings that I want to go on the x-axis. So here I've created a cell array that I'm calling x strings, and you can see that I've got January 2008 all the way through January 2013 in this cell array. Remember, when I'm creating a cell array, I have to use the curly braces to create that cell array rather than using the square brackets that I use for numeric vectors. So I go ahead and run that. Now, to actually translate those labels onto my bar graph, I have to use 2 set commands. The first set command says set GCA, that stands for get current axis, the x ticks, or the markers along the x-axis, and I want to set those markers to be from 1 to the number of labels that I'm trying to add to my bar chart. In this case, it would be 1 to 6, or 1 to length of x strings. My second set command says get the current axis, or the bar chart, and then set the x tick labels to the strings that are contained within my cell array called x strings, and this will actually write those labels to my bar chart. So let's see how that works. So I run those commands, and I can see that I do indeed get the bar chart with those labels translated to the x-axis. Then adding a legend and a y label gives me a very nice bar chart.